Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Political Debrief. I'm your host, Josh Oliverio. Today, I am sharing an interview that I had with former Speaker Anthony Rota when he was still in office back on September 19th of this year. If that date range sounds familiar, it's because the Speaker was at the center of a controversy just a couple days later. The interview took place on Tuesday, September 19th, and on Friday, September 22nd, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was invited to address a joint session of the Canadian Parliament. At the joint address, Mr. Rota unknowingly recognized a former Nazi fighter in the House of Commons.
The Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. Thank you.
This drew immediate backlash and he resigned a couple days later.
I reiterate my profound regret for my error in recognizing an individual in the House during the joint address to Parliament of President Zelensky. That public recognition has caused pain to individuals and communities, including the Jewish community in Canada and around the world, in addition to survivors of Nazi atrocities in Poland, among other nations. I accept full responsibility for my actions. My resignation is effective at the end of the sitting day tomorrow.
Earlier this year, I had an interview with former House of Commons Speaker Jeff Regan, where we talked about the controversy and how we can prevent it from happening again. If you're interested in checking out that episode, which I highly recommend, I'll leave a link down below. Even though Anthony Rota is no longer the Speaker of the House of Commons, I think this is a really important conversation to have about decorum in the House of Commons and how we can make the House of Commons a more welcoming place for all Canadians. All that said, I enjoyed our conversation and I hope you enjoy it as well. All right, and Anthony Rota joins me now. Mr. Speaker, thanks so much for taking the time for Political Debrief.
Thank you, Josh, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So first of all, for those of us that might not be aware, what is your role? Why should people care about your role?
Well, it's important. The role of the Speaker is rather diverse, and there's three main components of it. The first one, of course, is what everyone sees in the House. Basically, I'm the referee who takes care of decorum in the chamber, making sure that debate takes place in a very civilized manner and that people follow the rules of debate in the House. Because what happens is the House has put together rules that they have to follow, and it allows people to debate and not have to worry about things happening to them or people shouting them down or basically making sure that it's civil. Robert's Rules is very similar to what we used, so that works out very well. The other role that I have is one of diplomacy. I meet with a lot of people who come from other countries. Sometimes it's their prime ministers, their presidents, their speakers. They come through. There's two people that they want to meet when they come to Canada. One is the Prime Minister, of course, and then the next one is the Speaker, both of the Senate and of the House of Commons. And it usually works out fairly well. And again, that diplomatic mission, what it does is it opens doors between countries. It allows us to talk to each other, to get to learn from each other, and actually grow together. And that's something that is very important to any democracy and any relationship between two countries. Also, I travel quite a bit to other countries. This summer I was in Italy and met with their president and their speaker. And then I met with the Emperor of Japan when I was in Japan, along with the speaker over there for the G7 meeting. And again, meeting with other speakers, we exchange stories, we exchange practices, and we learn from each other. Like, there's no use making mistakes that someone else has made when you know that they did it a certain way. Sometimes you tweak it a bit, and it works out well, especially during COVID, where it was all brand new territory to all of us, and we got to know each other, not so much in person, but virtually. So even to this day, I've gotten to know a lot of people around the world without actually leaving my office, which is much like we're doing right now, which is kind of cool when you think about it. The other thing that people don't often see from the Speaker is I chair the Board of Internal Economy. The Speaker chairs the board that covers all the precinct, the whole of the Hill, which is a budget of about $518 million. So $500 million, and it involves everything from restaurants here to administration, to the clerks, everything that pertains to an MP doing his or her job and making sure that they have all the resources behind them. And it includes the security people who make sure that everybody is safe on the Hill. And that's something that we take very seriously, because if an MP can't come to work and feel safe, it makes it very difficult for them. So those are the three main areas of a speaker's job.
And then I guess, panning back a little bit into the House of Commons in general, why should young people care what happens in the House of Commons?
It affects them every day. I mean, everything that happens in the House affects them. I mean, whether it's laws that are made as far as how taxes are implemented, what they can do, what age they can take part in certain activities. So when you look at it, the decisions that get made in Parliament affect them on a day-to-day basis. And that's not only here in Ottawa. When you look at it at the provincial level, there's laws that are made there. How young can I drive, or how late do I have to wait before I drive? The speed limits that are set on highways. And then, of course, there's a different level. There's the municipal level that looks at municipalities. And each level has different responsibilities. Some of them overlap, but more than anything, they each have their own responsibilities, and it affects everyday lives. So when I come to Ottawa, my job is to look at the legislation that's there as an MP and make sure that the riding that I live in is well represented. Because if it's going to help one riding and not another, then there's a conflict there. So the role of the MP is to say, okay, look, this law is going to work, or we may have to change this. Why do young people have to get involved? So that they can influence that, whether it's helping the MP in the riding. Sometimes they can help in Ottawa. Sometimes they can join a party. Sometimes they can just be part of a protest group. As long as they know what they're talking about and they can say, we don't like a certain thing, then it has a very good effect on the legislation, because it forces everyone to listen and know exactly what changes to make so that it works for everyone.
And I think you touched on a couple in your previous answer, but I'll ask you anyway so we can get some more information. What are some ways that young people can get involved with the work that the House of Commons does?
At the House of Commons, they can volunteer. They can become pages. Just yesterday or on Sunday, I swore in 40 pages who help on the Hill. And I know there's a lot of volunteers who work with members of Parliament. There's people who work for members of Parliament, some of them part-time, some of them full-time, but it really does have an influence on that. But not only in Parliament can they do that, they can actually take part if they get involved in their own community. Let's say they're in their riding or at their home, and there's a committee that they want to take part in. They can take part in it and actually become part of the solution and have some influence on what the outcome is.
And as you mentioned, MPs in the House of Commons, they debate legislation, whatnot. They take their seats in the House. You're also an MP, right? You're the MP for Nipissing, Timiskaming, I'm pretty sure.
You did that well.
But you have a different seat in the House. You have a seat at the front. I'm sure you think this too. I think it's a little bit of a better seat. I've stood in your spot before. I think it's a cool spot. But you can't take any sort of position on any issues that are before the House. You need to be a neutral third party. So how are the people of Nipissing, Timiskaming represented by MP Anthony Rota?
Well, the nice thing about being Speaker is you don't vote on issues, on anything, on bills, unless there's a tie. And then that's when you come in and you vote. And normally the tradition is that the Speaker will vote to keep the discussion going. So it's not definite. It's not stopping anything. They want to keep everything going. But one of the main roles of an MP is to make sure that their riding is represented. And some of the ways to do that is in the House. Some of them is speaking directly to the ministers and making sure that they understand what's going on in your riding, so that when they're drafting the legislation or making changes to the legislation, they know what is going on. And one of the things that happens with me as speaker is sometimes I'll say, like, would you mind taking a few minutes to speak with me? And most ministers will not say no to the minister, because you don't want to upset the speaker, right? And because that person controls whether you speak in the House or whatnot. And there's so many other things, but just out of respect more than anything else. And more often than not, it'll happen after question period, where I'll ask a certain minister, would you have a few minutes to meet with me? We'll sit down and I'll say, look, here's the issues I'm having with this legislation, or what's going on in my writing that really should be represented within this legislation, and it's not. And usually a 5-minute discussion turns into 10, 15, 20 minutes, and the minister has a good understanding of what's going on in the chamber. The other thing too is, had I not been speaker, you would have no idea what Nipissing Temiskaming is, where it is, whatever, but it's bringing a highlight to the riding. So people like Josh Oliveira will know where Nipissing Temiskaming is, and it raises the profile of the riding, which I think a lot of people really appreciate.
I think that's something that a lot of people might not know about the speaker, or the election of the speaker, is that it's less, you have to opt out to be the speaker, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll phrase my question a little bit differently. What made you not want to not be the speaker?
Well, you know what? It's everybody plays different roles in Parliament. And one of the things I've always found with myself in Parliament is I'm not one of these hyper partisan people who wants to kind of jump on the other side and bash the other side, or come out about the party. It's more about bringing people together. And it's something that I've always done. I've made a point of it when there's something that's going on and there's some differences. I want to know what the common ground is, so that we can all come to that common ground and then work out our differences, or see what differences we can live with in order to bring stuff to get some solutions. And that's something that as an MP works out well. So I was often the emissary that went over to say, look, where can we come together on this? And doing that, you make a lot of friends on both sides. And to me, that's something that's important. So as speaker, I get to be that person that tries to bring people together and tries to maintain some civility in the chamber, so that we can accomplish something, as opposed to just sitting there and arguing and not getting to something. And to me, I remember when I first got here, I thought, wow, the speaker, he's right up there next to God. I mean, he's really something. And one thing you realize after a while is the speaker is just another person who happens to be the speaker. But I thought, hey, I bet you I can do that. And I've chaired a number of committees over the years, both in Parliament and prior to getting here. And I've gotten a lot of comments on how well it went when I was chairing committees. So I thought, you know what, I bet you I could do that. And I was Assistant Deputy Speaker for a while, and then took over as Speaker back in 2019.
And I think probably when people recognize you the most, or for me, it's when I hear your voice. I know that question period's on, right? Question period is kind of what Canadians think of when they think of the House of Commons. You know, the opposition on one side, kind of criticizing the government criticizing them back, debating the issues. And it's I think it's the part of the House that gets the most televised. I'm sure you would agree with that as well.
It is. It's got the highest profile. Like I said, now people know where Nipissing Temiskaming is. They know where I come from. And it's interesting you say that, because I was at a meeting not too long ago. It was an event. And I was talking with someone, and all of a sudden this lady turns around and says, that voice, I recognize that voice. And then she came over to talk to me. So it was kind of interesting. It was I want to say comical, but it was quite an honor to have that happen.
Question period is, I think, by many people regarded as a time where the House of Commons isn't seen in the best light.
And continues on his personal and his partisan attacks. We're going to continue to deal with.
I'm sorry. What part of, while somebody is speaking, we sit quietly and listen, do we not understand? I have to name you for disregarding the authority of the chair. I order you withdraw from the House. I want to remind the honourable members. The honourable member, I'm not going to say honourable member. Did he want to withdraw that, please? Remind the honourable members that singing is not allowed. Whether it's good or bad, it's not allowed.
And I was in Ottawa. It was budget day back in March. And I remember walking in at 7 p.m. at night, the night before I walked into the chamber. And there were like 6 MPs in the chamber. And I remember it was like a legitimate debate. I don't remember what the legislation was, but it was like a legitimate debate. There were and then after the fact, I saw when the cameras faded away, they went over and talked to each other, which I found really interesting. Do you think that there's a way to make question period like that, or is it just too hard to do that?
Well, the question period, I'm going to say it's almost theatrical. What happens is it's a chance for the opposition parties to say, hey, look what this government is doing wrong. And on the other side, the government is saying, oh, no, they're wrong. Look what we're doing right. And they have to make it effective. And it's a time when everybody is in the chamber. And it's more about questioning the government, making sure the opposition is holding the government to account and make sure they're in line. Is it the best system in the world? I don't think the best system in the world exists right now. There's just different systems. But one thing you'll notice is, like you said, what you see, that visceral hate that's there really dissipates after question period. And you do see people going out for a drink, for a meal together. They'll discuss things amongst themselves, very friendly and very cooperatively. And what I encourage people to do is 2 things. One is, if they can, watch CPAC more often and watch what's going on in the chamber, not just question period. Then you'll actually see that discussion take place and you'll see a lot of it happen. Now, the second thing, if you can make it to Ottawa and see it in person and see what you saw, where you see 2 people about to kill each other during question period, and then suddenly question period's over and they go out and they talk and see if they can reach something, some kind of agreement. And I think that's what most Canadians need to see more of. Apparently, one of the things that has changed a lot is when they brought cameras into the chamber. And I talked to people who were there when they brought cameras into the chamber and televised it. If they had to do it over again, they probably wouldn't, because it really did change the atmosphere. And I was about your age when they brought cameras in the chamber, and I thought it was great because I was, I'm going to say, a political junkie. I really enjoyed watching politics and reading the news, but to be able to actually see it live, that was something else. But it did change the demeanor of the chamber.
Mr. Speaker, my last question for you this afternoon. If you had to go back to when you were 14 or 15, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
One of the biggest things that I would give, advice I would give to myself is, don't be afraid to try stuff. Because what you're going to regret in life is what you didn't do, not what you did and did wrong. Those things are going to be there and you can learn from them. And those things you did, sometimes you're going to actually do well with it and progress. Sometimes you're going to be very embarrassed and say, oh man, why did I do that? But you know what? You have to try stuff. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's the best piece of advice I think I can give myself if I was there. Because there was a lot of times where I thought, okay, I could do this, but maybe I'll hold back a bit, and you miss an opportunity. So don't ever miss an opportunity. There's all kinds of things that you can do, and please don't be shy and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Anthony Rota, thanks so much for coming on Political Debrief.
Thank you very much, Josh. It's been a pleasure.
And that's it for this special edition of Political Debrief. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in hearing the full conversation with former Speaker Anthony Rota, I would encourage you to take a look at the podcast edition down below. We talk about his riding of Nipissing-Temiskaming and also some other fun facts about being Speaker. Also, I would really appreciate if you subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts to stay informed whenever there's a new episode. Also, if you want to follow me on social media down below, you can get some alerts when I post new episodes as well. That's all from me for now. See you next time.